Hey everyone, Nathan here, Absurd Being. Alright, so video 10, the visible and the invisible. So we're moving into the third chapter today, Interrogation and Intuition. And I've broken the video up into two parts, so let's just jump straight into the first one, the three types of questions. Remember that the goal of philosophy, we've talked about this before, we talked about it a lot in the last video. The goal of philosophy for Merleau-Ponty is not to raise questions and provide answers that would little by little fill in the blanks. We're not looking for an answer. We're not looking for a complete, fixed, perfect fit to explain something. That's not what philosophy, as Merleau-Ponty's doing it here as ontology, that's not what he's after. Any answer you get like that cashes out in one kind of fixed answer to everything or philosophical position is always embedded in a broader context, a world or being, as Merleau-Ponty's calling it. And it's that Merleau-Ponty's after. So we're not going to get, with philosophy, Merleau-Ponty's philosophy, we're not going to get an answer. We're not going to get answers to these questions. We're going to get something that is like we're going to get a fertile ground out of which different answers can be postulated or considered. For example, if you think of some of the ways that philosophy has tried to answer the question of what is being, and maybe it's substance, maybe it's mind, maybe it's matter, or any answer that cashes out in one of those ways has failed to take into account the fact that there is a thinker who knows the world as one of those things, who's positing the world or being in one of those ways. And so the world is being considered as something over and above or detached from the thinker. And what Merleau-Ponty is saying is that this is the circle we want to understand, not just the object for the subject, not just the thought of the thinker, but we want to catch the thinker in our understanding of reality as well, in our understanding of ontological reality, being. So we have to look beyond that, beyond these, in a way, superficial or shallow answers to these questions. So we're not looking for an answer, we're looking for a ground out of which these different answers can be posited. So, like I was just saying, instead of taking the context as given, presupposing the world, which is what you do when you look for a single answer, when you look to fill in the gaps, philosophy turns back upon the world in order to seek the origin and the meaning of the questions and of the responses and the identity of him or her who questions. So looking for that broader context that includes the thinker as well as the thing thought, the answer posited. So like I said, that I think a good expression there is a fertile ground. That's what we're looking for. It's not going to be this or that thing. That's not going to be an answer. It's going to be a ground out of which an answer can arise, upon which an answer can be posited. So with that in mind, there are three types of questions that Merleau-Ponty puts forward here. The first, he doesn't give them names as such, but the first I'll call ordinary. Ordinary questions are things like, where am I, or what time is it? And these involve the provisional absence of a fact. So essentially holes in a fabric that we take for granted. So where am I? The fabric so there's an absence of a fact, some missing information. Where am I? The fabric that is taken for granted there is space, right? Or when, or what time is it? So the same thing, there's an absence of a fact, and what's being taken for granted in this question is time. So those are ordinary questions. Then the second type are philosophical questions, but philosophical anset. I'm not sure if I've pronounced that right. It's Latin, but the meaning is whether it is. So anset philosophical questions, whether something is. And these are essentially generalizations of the first type of question. So instead of asking, where am I? These questions ask whether space exists. Does space exist? Instead of asking what time is it, it asks, does time exist? Is time real? And the same for other things like movement or the world, Merleau-Ponty mentions. So they're generalizations of the first type, asking whether something exists. But Merleau-Ponty says these are also semi-questions, the same as the ordinary questions. They're also semi-questions because although they sound like they presuppose nothing to ask, so where does space exist, they actually presume there is something, and the only question is if it is really this space, this time, this movement, or this world that we think we see or feel. So when I ask, is space real, for example, I'm already presupposing that there is something. And now I just want to know, is this idea I have of space, is that right? Is space the kind of thing that I think it is? But there's already something being presupposed there because, for a start, I'm already asking the question in some kind of apparent spatiality. So there's already a presupposition, so these questions are semi-questions. And Merleau-Ponty includes Descartes in this line of questioning because his questions proceed by doubt, methodic doubt. And that's essentially what these unset philosophical questions are. The driving force of them is doubt. Is this real? Is this thing, space, time, movement, whatever, is that what I think it is? Does it exist? And when I ask, does it exist, I mean, does it exist according to some kind of postulate, according to the way I think space or time or movement or whatever exists. And then the third type of questions, these are philosophical as well, but these are quid sit. And this means what it is. So quid sit philosophical questions simply ask, what is world? What is being? These questions, then, Merleau-Ponty says, ask about a being, therefore, that is meaning and meaning of meaning. Not only that meaning that is attached to words and belongs to the order of statements and of things said, to a circumscribed region of the world, to a certain type of being, but universal meaning. It will be that without which there would be neither world nor language nor anything at all. So with these quid sit philosophical questions, we aren't presupposing anything. We're acknowledging from the start this situation, the fact that we are in a world and we're inquiring about that situation, that fact. So we're not passing over that and then asking if it's real or if a certain thing is the way we think it is. Instead, we're directly interrogating the very fact that there is this world, there is being in the first place. There is being in which I can even ask these questions. That's what's being interrogated here. So nothing is being presupposed or taken for granted. And just a couple of things to drill down into on that quote. The first thing I wanted to note is this idea of meaning and the meaning of meaning, or universal meaning. I've talked about Derrida a little bit in the connections or the overlaps between Merleau-Ponty here and Derrida. And here you might see there's a deviation from, or a split between the two, because Derrida would never describe the origin as meaning of meaning, and let alone universal meaning. He would never put that word or that expression to it, to the origin. But I think this is just a semantic difference, actually, because Merleau-Ponty, when he says meaning of meaning, he's not talking about propositional meaning. He's not talking about meaning in discourse, as Derrida would say, but he's talking about so he gives it a different word, a different name, universal meaning, to indicate that it's not that kind of meaning. It's not the ordinary propositional kind of meaning that we usually think about. And this is really all Derrida is doing when he calls the origin the source of all discourse, when he calls that non-meaning. It's non-meaning because it's not discursive meaning. It's not rational meaning. It goes beyond those characteristics, those features. So he calls it non-meaning, but actually I think it's the same thing as Merleau-Ponty's universal meaning. They both mean not that kind of meaning that we typically attribute, or that it's not that kind of meaning as we typically understand the word. It's not the kind of meaning that we get from propositional statements within kind of a framework of understanding, within a fixed, localized context. And so I think they both, although it sounds like superficially Derrida and Merleau-Ponty are talking about completely different things, I think the terms they use are referring to the same kind of thing. It's not to say that they're both doing the same. They're both engaged in the same project. They aren't, but there is this similarity. Although they go in different directions, which I'm not going to explore here, but there is, like I say, this overlap that I think is worth noting and is significant. The being that Merleau-Ponty is talking about here, being therefore that is meaning, is that without which there would be neither world nor language nor anything at all. So it's, again, we're just going right back to understanding that the fundamental preconditions for there to be anything, for there to be any kind of philosophizing, any kind of thought, anything that we do, we're looking to understand that original situation. And the quid sit is more effective than the unsit precisely because it detaches from all beings. It questions them as to their meaning in Merleau-Ponty's sense, the way that they fit into this broader, ontologically deeper, more originary context. So rather than getting caught up in whether they are, whether they exist, or trying to prove something, trying to grasp certitude, for example, Merleau-Ponty's quid sit questions go straight for the jugular, as it were, questioning these beings as to their being, the way that they fit into this deeper context. And that also, of course, has very Heideggerian resonances, right? Detaching from beings and to investigate being. That's exactly how Heidegger described in his project, the ontological difference between beings and being itself. So we're all working in this kind of field, or they're all working in this kind of field, the similar area. They're using different terminology in places, but we can see the way that they're all kind of connected. And just drilling down a little bit onto this notion of a circumscribed region of the world. Merleau-Ponty talks about the way that his goal isn't a partial aim. Philosophy alone goes all the way in the effort to know what nature and history and the world and being are, when our contact with them is not only the partial and abstract contact of the physical experiment and calculation or of the historical analysis, but the total contact of someone who, living in the world and in being, means to see his life fully, particularly his life of knowledge, and who, an inhabitant of the world, tries to think himself in the world, to think the world in himself, to unravel their jumbled essences, and to form finally the signification being. So nature, Merleau-Ponty is trying to go beneath the essence of physics. History, he's trying to go beneath the Marxist essence of history, trying to understand that which is necessary in order for there to be a physics or to be an essence of history. Each of those disciplines, physics and history, are partial and abstract. Merleau-Ponty is looking for universal meaning, which includes the thinker in the world. It includes that person doing the knowing or asking the questions, doing the interrogation. In a way, he's looking for a kind of lowest common denominator, that which must be in order for there to be physics, in order for there to be history, in order for there to be any other of these localized partial fields, disciplines, questionings. And this brings us to the second part of the video, essence. So let me start this section with a quote. When philosophy finds around the things and the world as facts and as doubtful facts a horizon that encompasses our negations as our affirmations, and when it penetrates into this horizon, certainly it must define anew this new something. Does it define it well or sufficiently by saying that it is the essence? Is the question of the essence the ultimate question? With the essence and the pure spectator who sees it, are we really at the source? Okay, so first, a couple of things to note about this quote. The first thing is this idea of the distinction between fact and essence is a Husserlian one. Husserl talks about facts, which are empirical, variable, contingent, and natural, as opposed to essences, which are invariable, universal, essential. And he makes that distinction because he wants to move from the former to the latter, from an understanding of the former to the latter, and that's basically what phenomenology is about. It's about uncovering essences rather than simply discussing or describing facts. It's looking for those invariant structural features that make up experience. And so Merleau-Ponty is referencing that here when he says philosophy finds, so we have the facts as described by science, for example, and around those it sees the horizon that encompasses all of them, that's Merleau-Ponty's being, and he asks, does it describe, is this horizon well captured by the word essence? So is this fact versus essence distinction that Husserl makes, is that a good one, he's asking. And it's hard to know if he's making a criticism here or not, because in one sense he is. He's saying that the whole project, Husserl's phenomenology, in pinning everything on this original distinction, fact versus essence, he's questioning the validity of that. But from my perspective, although I don't know what Merleau-Ponty thinks about this, but from my perspective, he's doing something different. He's doing ontology. So when he asks, is the word essence a good word to describe this wider horizontal context, he's asking it from within an ontological investigation. Whereas for Husserl, the word essence, the way that it captures those invariant structural features of experience, that is exactly what phenomenology is after. It is what phenomenology wants to capture and describe, and it's perfectly valid. It's perfectly legitimate. Whereas for Merleau-Ponty, who wants to move in it, not towards more truth, but moving in a different direction. He's trying to understand the ontological framework within which phenomenology, as a descriptor, as a description of structures of conscious experience, he's trying to understand the framework within which that can be explicated. So I see them on a first reading. You might think this is a criticism of Husserl, because he's directly challenging this idea that there's the distinction between fact versus essence is the distinction. But I don't see it as a critique of Husserl. Whether Merleau-Ponty did or not, it's unclear from the text. But I don't see it as a criticism of Husserl, because they're doing different things. Husserl was explicitly doing phenomenology, and Merleau-Ponty is doing ontology. Those two things are different. So when Merleau-Ponty's finding this problem with the word essence and that understanding of this horizon as an essence, it's not a criticism of Husserl. Sorry, it's just a recognition that these are two different things, two different branches of philosophy. And the other thing that I wanted to note there is the pure spectator that Merleau-Ponty talks about at the end. With the essence and the pure spectator who sees it, are we really at the source? So what is this pure spectator? It's a spectator because in getting at an essence and understanding an essence, we're formulating an idea about something which is separate from ourselves. We're describing something which we are stepping back in order to capture this thing. And that Merleau-Ponty has talked about as soaring above the world, or an aerial view. In doing this, we are distancing ourselves from the object, from the thing under consideration, in this case an essence, and we're looking upon it as if we are removed from it, as if we've turned it into an object for us to observe. We've abstracted it out from the broader, wider horizontal context that is Merleau-Ponty's being. So that's why that's what spectator means there. And the pure comes about because in order to reduce an experience to its essence, we ourselves must contribute nothing to the event, or it is no longer an essence. We must be, Merleau-Ponty says, without secrets, without latency. And this is impossible and is a failure to include the thinker in the world. So we have to, if we want to understand the absolute original ground of the world, then we have to include ourselves in it, which means we can't reduce ourselves to nothing. We must, in order to understand the totality, we have to be a part of it. And we have to be a part of it as we are, not as a stripped down, empty observer. We have to be the way we are. And that has to be accounted for and has to be a part of being. So this idea of the pure spectator is the antithesis of what Merleau-Ponty's all about here. So the question then was, if we go back, is this horizontal context, this framework that is being, is that well described by the word essence? And the answer from Merleau-Ponty is no, but there's a little bit to it. So if there is a world and things, Merleau-Ponty says, they must observe structural laws. And these structural laws could qualify as something like an essence. That's fine. So there is an essence. We can talk about essences. The problem with this, though, is that it's already derivative for Merleau-Ponty. Because, as he says, whence do we know that there is something, that there is a world? How do we know that there is a world, that there is something? That hasn't been accounted for if we restrict ourselves to essences, because we've already created that distance. We've already reduced ourselves out of the picture, and we've taken something. Therefore, since we're out of the picture, whatever we're investigating or interrogating is now abstract. It's something that's been taken out of the whole. The structural laws for the world and things are phenomenology. This experience of the world within which structural laws can be discerned is more originary. This is ontology. And this, you remember, is exactly what we described as perceptual faith. This knowing that there is a world is beneath the essence. It is the experience of which the essence is a part and which it does not envelop. The being of the essence is not primary. It does not rest on itself. It is not it that can teach us what being is. The essence is not the answer to the philosophical question. The philosophical question is not posed in us by a pure spectator. It is first a question as to how, upon what ground the pure spectator is established, from what more profound source he himself draws. So the knowing, the experience of the world and things is prior to and envelops any essence we might uncover about the world and things. Rather than a pure spectator, so detached, eerily observing entity that has reduced itself, that has taken itself out of the equation, that is nothing, that contributes nothing to this picture. Rather than that, that and the essence that it would know, that it has uncovered, Merleau-Ponty wants to understand the world out of which the pure spectator and the essence can emerge. So just going beneath understanding the absolute origin, the source, that's what being is here. So the Merleau-Ponty calls it the Sosein, or the essence, is the manner or style of the world, not its sign, not its being. The pure spectator in me, which elevates each thing to the essence, which produces its ideas, is assured that it touches being with them only because it emerges within an actual experience surrounded by actual experiences, by the actual world, by the actual being, which is the ground of the predicative being. So it's quite good. Sosein, right? That's the essence, is the manner or the style. And that's a nice, very Merleau-Pontian way of thinking about this. The style of the world. It's not its sign, not its being. The being that Merleau-Ponty is looking for here, the Sein, is the ground of the predicative being, which would be the essence, the Sosein, it's the propositional meaning. We're back to we can frame it in that terminology. Propositional meaning versus universal meaning. Meaning versus the meaning of meaning. All those ways that Merleau-Ponty is trying to capture this idea that we're going beneath everything to understand the world in this broader, the most originary sense possible. So that, I think, is kind of our overview of Merleau-Ponty's project. And then he then asks, if I become a pure spectator only when I reduce the world or the thing to its essence, what am I prior to this? What am I prior to being the pure spectator that knows, that understands essences? And his answer, I am a field of experience where there is only sketched out the family of material things and other families, and the world as their common style, the family of things said and the world of speech as their common style, and finally the abstract and fleshless style of something in general. In order to pass from this to the essences, it is necessary for me to actively intervene. So we're back to this idea of a field of experience. Merleau-Ponty likes that word, that idea, a field, and I can see why. It's nice. First of all, a field of experience, so it gives us the sense that experience is primary. It's Merleau-Ponty's doing ontology, but it's ontology which starts from experience, because there's nothing else, right? Anything else would be to move beyond what we can really talk about. Beyond anything beyond that is going perhaps too far into a metaphysical direction for Merleau-Ponty. And the other reason this is a nice expression is the word itself, field. So this really emphasizes that we are not a fixed thing. We're not, for example, a subject or a consciousness or a mind or a body, any of those things. Rather, we are a field. We're more nebulous than we have traditionally tried to understand ourselves as within philosophy. We're not fixed things. Remember, we talked about in the last video, Merleau-Ponty called us measurements of being. Again, not something fixed, not a full positive thing in itself. We are more hazy, ambiguous. We're more field-like than object-like. And so this really captures that idea well. We've got to stop thinking of ourselves as specific, fixed things. Our nature is more hazy, ambiguous, more field-like than particle-like, if you want to use that distinction. And so Merleau-Ponty asks, what is originally disclosed to a field like this? Not particular things, not essences, but sketched out domains. A family of material things sharing a common style that's world. A family of things said sharing a common style that's speech. A family of abstract ideas sharing a common style that is generality. So first of all, those three domains, I think, are a nice way of kind of capturing everything that we do, everything that we they capture the full field of experience: material things, speech, and abstract concepts. That's kind of a neat, tidy summary of what human beings are concerned with. And the other thing that's nice about that is there's nothing certain in there. There's nothing fixed or specific. These are sketched out domains. There's no certitude. Nothing has been determined here. Rather, there's the sense that a field has opened up, and we know the style of that field or the domain. We know the style of it. We know the kinds of things we can expect to find within that domain or to uncover within that domain. But there's nothing specific yet. There's nothing determinate. And that is capturing this idea. What's fundamental? This is capturing that originary situation that is ontological being. It's not ontological being doesn't reveal certain things as things. It's the ground out of which anything can appear as something in the first place. Which means that ground won't be, it's not amenable to any kind of certainty, to any kind of determination. Because it has to be, to use that word I used earlier, fertile enough for anything to appear. So it itself can't be a specific thing. And so I like that idea, or that phrase, sketched out domains. And we move from this, to give it another word, prethetic understanding of the world, to essences only by actively intervening, Merleau-Ponty says. And it's that active intervention that gets us to essences. But what is this active intervention? How is it that we intervene to do this? And this is straight out of Husserl, not by engaging with things, not by exploring our experience, but by stepping back from the things and varying them. Varying them and the field in which they appear in order to find certain invariant relationships and structures, i.e., those things that one could not suppress or change without the thing ceasing to be what it is. And that's exactly what an essence is. And that's exactly how Husserl described the search for an essence. Change certain things, change features, change characteristics in the thing, change features, characteristics in the field, and see if the thing is still the thing. If it isn't that thing anymore, then you've found something that is essential, something that is required for that thing to be the thing it is. And then you've got an essence. And that's basically what phenomenology is out to do. And that's the process of intervention that Merleau-Ponty is talking about. So you have to break in upon this original being. You have to perform some kind of operation in order to get to an essence. And what Merleau-Ponty wants to do is go back, of course, to before you performed that operation, because there was something there already. What was that original before? That's what Merleau-Ponty is looking for. Further, Merleau-Ponty drills down on this idea of essence. Still, note that the essence is not a positive being. It is invariant. So there's a negation there. It's the change or the absence that would alter or destroy the thing. So, for example, spatiality. If spatiality is invariant, it is that which cannot be altered without destroying the material thing. And again, Merleau-Ponty is looking for a positive being. He's looking to describe something, but not a particular thing. He's looking to describe that out of which anything can arise. That, I'll use that expression again, that fertile ground, which precisely because it's fertile won't be any of the things that we find on the ground or in the ground. It has to be big enough to include anything. So he's looking for something. It's a positive being, but not a positive being that is any kind of being that we know, or any kind of being that we can even express or talk about. Because as soon as we talk about it, we've talked about this before, you're in being. You've already missed this originary ground that we're looking for. And finally, remember that to uncover the essence, we must become a pure spectator. We have to remove ourselves from the experience. We have to contribute nothing to it. But if we do that, is it still an experience? And the answer is no. Instead, Merleau-Ponty says, I am, to reuse his own phrase, soaring above the experience. I would have reduced the experience to an object. Subject, object, knower, known, thing, thinker, thing, thought. And an appearing that is therefore occurring within a wider, unseen, invisible, you might say, context, horizon. And it's that Merleau-Ponty is looking for. All right, let's have a look at a summary. So first we looked at the three types of questions, and these questions Merleau-Ponty posed in light of the goal of philosophy, which is to see the origin and the meaning of the world, but not to cash it out as a fixed thing, as a certain thing, not to provide an answer to the question. The answer is going to be, in a sense, a non-answer, because it is that which provides space for answers to be given. So the first question was ordinary, and these questions involve provincial absences of a fact. For example, where am I? What time is it? The second type of question were philosophical. These were unset philosophical questions, and they're generalizations of the first type. So they ask whether space, time, movement, or world exist. And what's important about these, Merleau-Ponty says both of these first two types of questions are semi-questions because they both presuppose a world. They take for granted that there is a world which we can then question, or in which we can then look to find answers. So this leads us to the third type of questions, the quid sit philosophical questions. And these were essentially universal meaning. They were questions directed towards universal meaning. And questions of the kind or of the type, what is world? What is being? And really there's only one question, and it's that. What is world? Where world and being mean the same thing. And these questions drill down beneath all of the other kinds of questions, any of the other kinds of questions, to understand that very first thing, the fact that I can even pose a question. What is that? What is that situation? And one critical feature about these quid-sit philosophical questions is that they include the thinker. So instead of the thinker abstracting themselves out from the situation and posing an object, the thinker must be included within the totality, within this universal meaning that is world. The second part of the video was essence, and the essence of a thing is essentially a feature that is invariant. And what Merleau-Ponty notes about this is that this means it's not a positive being. It hasn't uncovered anything genuinely originary. Nothing, there's no source here, because it's that which one cannot suppress or change without destroying the thing itself. And what Merleau-Ponty is looking for is a positive being, in the sense that it's the meaning of meaning, that out of which an essence can arise. And also, essences require that we become pure spectators, withdrawn from an experience, abstracted out of an experience, and contributing nothing themselves, without secrets, Merleau-Ponty said. And if we follow that route, at that point there is no longer any experience. So it's unclear what it becomes. The whole activity becomes a little bit abstract at that point. We're not dealing with fundamental ontology anymore. And finally, what is prior to the search for essences? If I am not a pure spectator, or prior to my becoming a pure spectator, what is there? What am I? There is a field of experience. And this field, a nice expression because it doesn't crystallize us into any particular thing, but it leaves that openness or that space for anything to appear. And this field of experience discloses families and styles. Again, not specific things or essences. It's a way of thinking, the origin, that is big enough to capture everything. It's big enough, it has enough space for anything to arise within it. And that's where I'm going to finish up today. Thanks for watching. Hopefully that helped a little bit, and I'll see you in the next video.